that question, can you even do the whole coexist thing, right? And I had the picture I put up there, and had all the different aspects of different world religions and different things, and we were trying to plow into the consideration of, okay, can we coexist? And the short of it was, you can answer that question two different ways, right? Yes, we can, and no, we can't, right? Because we're not certainly trying to end the existence of anybody, but we do not believe that those faiths can mesh from a Christian perspective. And today I wanted to dive into a little bit more of that, because last week my endeavor was to begin to lay the foundation for why that concept does not work. Why, when somebody looks at you and says, if you're ever talking to somebody, kind of giving them the gospel, or just trying to start a spiritual conversation, you say, well, I'm a Christian, and they might say something to the effect of, well, I don't think it really matters what you believe. As long as you believe in something, I think you'll be okay. Or I think all religions are a viable path to God. And as long as you're genuine and you're fervent about it, then that's really what matters. Or or it doesn't really matter what you believe, as long as you're a good person. Everything will work out fine for you. Why is it that doesn't work? And so last week, what we did was we talked about the different types of faith systems that there are, so that we could begin to see why you can't bring all of those things together. And I put this thing up on there. I don't have a PowerPoint to show tonight, so I figured if there's ever a question that comes to your mind, it'd be an easy thing for you just to grab it real quick while I'm teaching and just shoot it at me. And I wouldn't necessarily see it today unless you say, hey, I put a question there. Can you look at it? But I'll look at it throughout the week. So when we are considering the different faith systems, we talked about monotheistic faiths. We talked about polytheism, pantheism. Can anybody redefine for me any of the things we talked about last week? Take the one I just said. What is pantheism?
Everything is God.
Everything is God, right? Polytheism, there are many gods. And so we are semi-familiar with some of those concepts as a whole. And those are the different faith systems there are. So tonight I wanted to, what we're going to ultimately get into is some of the exclusive claims of Christianity and how they really don't mesh with a coexist mindset. But before we ever get there, tonight I wanted to highlight for you some of the basic beliefs of the, what I would say, the five major faith systems, religions, so to speak, in the world today. Because somebody might tell you, they might say, well, I'm a Buddhist. And maybe you know a lot about Buddhism. But maybe you're like, that would pretty much shut the conversation down, unless I was like really ready to ask a lot of questions, because I really don't know what that means. We're like, what does that actually look like in that person's life? I remember I was out knocking on doors one time, and I walked up to this lady. She was sitting outside on like this back patio of this bunch of like condo-like things or duplexes or something, and I walked up to her and I told her who I was, why I was there, and her response to me was, and what it sounded like, she said, she said her name, and she said, and I'm wicked, is what she sounded like, and I'm wicked. And I was like, so am I, right? And but the Bible says all is sin and comes short of the glory of God. And I didn't know what in the world. And I said, what? And she said, I'm Wiccan. And I still didn't know what to say, because I honestly, at that point, I was like, I don't know. What do you say to somebody that says something like that? And I told you last week that my encouragement for you is, don't try to say anything. Ask another question. Because you want to understand the person you're talking with, so that you can be a testimony, so you can be a witness to them, so you can share truth with them in a way that's going to resonate in their minds. But, and especially if you don't know anything about it, or enough to elaborate on it, then definitely just try to figure out, well, why are you that? How did you? There's got to be a story there, and I've said that way before when talking to somebody. Well, there's got to be a story behind that. You might tell me what it is, right? Well, how did you come to that position, right? But leaving all that aside, I want to talk tonight about just some of the basic basic truths about some of the five or the five major world religions. And I'm not an expert on comparative religions. There's no doubt that maybe some of you might even know more about some of these things than I do with regards to certain ones of these faiths, if you've taken a little bit of time to study about them. But I've done basic study enough to have a grasp of what these particular things are. And I gave you this comparison of beliefs chart because I thought it might be a little bit more helpful than just me rattling off a whole long list of random things. And you can look at you can look at it as we go. We're not necessarily going to break down every one of these little blocks on that table, but it's there for you to see at a glance some of the different things. And so what I've done is I've gotten together this chart that has all of the faiths laid out next to each other, and then comparing, okay, what do they believe about God? What does that faith system believe about the human problem? Salvation, or the goal of that faith, afterlife. What is their scripture or their authority for what they believe? Who are their foundational figures? What is their means of worship? What do they believe about Christ? And what view of their salvation source? Where does salvation come from in that particular faith system? And I'm not going to go across starting at Christianity. We've got obviously a good grasp of Christianity, and we'll end on that one. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is Hinduism. Now, Hinduism is most prominent in which country? India, right? India. Hinduism is considered to be, so a little bit of what I'm going to do is tell you some of the history of it, but Hinduism is considered to be one of the oldest religions still practiced in the world today. And so Hinduism originated or came to be around 2000 BC. And just to put that in perspective, Abraham was alive in 2000 BC. And basically our knowledge of ancient Chinese tradition goes back to about 2000 BC. The oldest, the country that has the oldest history, written history that we can really look back to goes to basically about 3000 BC, and that would be Egypt. And so what I think is interesting, this is kind of an aside, that all of these major faith systems or major philosophical traditions, China tends to lean towards philosophical traditions as opposed to religion, but all of them originated around the same time. And you can look at that in a lot of different ways. Obviously, the concept of evolution, where man was evolving in all these different pockets, and then one of them became more prominent than another. It kind of breaks down a little bit when you see that all of a sudden everybody began to write at the same time. And everybody developed their form of religion at about the same time. And all of these things spontaneously across the known world, obviously they weren't over here at that point, but across the known world that day, just kind of spontaneously everybody figured it out all at once. And it's a little bit, it'd be a little far-fetched if the concepts of the evolving of man worked out that way. But that's kind of an aside. When you look at Hinduism was something that originated around 2000 BC, and ultimately what it was a conglomeration of the ideas of tribes that began to mingle together in those areas, and they areas of India, and they began to practice a form of spiritism mixed with polytheism that ultimately became what we see as Hinduism today. The concepts of the religions that we look at today, it's important to note that they have all developed, right? Over time, the concept of man-based religion has been something that has been ever evolving. Now, people even say that about, well, yeah, religion has been a concept that's came on the scene, and people have used it to explain the unexplained in the world around them, and Christianity is no different. And you can look back at the Bible, and you can certainly see, well, Abraham knew a lot less Scripture than you do, right? Abraham could not have taken that quiz that you took tonight, right? Because there weren't books of the Bible in Abraham's day, right? So there's even a progressive revelation that we have seen throughout, even in the Bible. But when we look at man's religion, what you need to have, what I would encourage you to have in your mind is the picture of, okay, creation. What happened in creation? God created everything. What happened right after creation? Adam and Eve fell. After they fell, then Cain and Abel had a little spat, and Abel didn't make it out alive, right? And so then Seth was born, and the line of the children of God, so to speak, they continued, and Cain split off from that, and then people began to multiply. And it didn't take very long for people to begin to depart from the original knowledge that they had about God and begin to do things their own way. And obviously we know it's in Genesis chapter 6 that God then speaks to Noah, and that's 1,400 years after the creation of the world. And so there's all of those things happen, but all of what was happening along that process of time, and then you had the flood, and then the restarting of the human race, and then once again it just kind of sped on to mankind coming up with their own explanations for the world as they saw it. Because this is what tends to happen. If you see something you can't explain, you most of the time try to find an answer for why it is that way. And when you look at the world around you, there are a lot of things that are just absolutely astounding, right? I mean, the way the world works, we've talked about creation and everything. Well, you are privileged to be sitting in a church that teaches you what the Bible says about it. Now, you still have to come to a point of gripping that and understanding that and saying, okay, this is what I want to believe. This is what I choose to believe as is the truth. And we try to give you all kinds of reasons for why that is the case. But when somebody doesn't have that, and they go on the search for answers, that has been what has produced false religion. False faith systems have arisen from man's attempt to explain the unexplained in the world around them. And Hinduism is no different. Hinduism is a very, very old faith system that sought to explain the facts of reality around them and ultimately came down to, if you want to look at Hinduism as something, it was a combination of Spiritism, polytheism, and philosophical beliefs about the reality of the world around them. Hinduism views life like your life, like a drop of water falling into the ocean. And your goal is to get into the ocean. There are two basic concepts in Hinduism are the concept of karma. Who can tell me what karma is? Or explain it for the class.
Kind of like, well, that's the way I understand it through Sarita. But basically, you're going to earn whatever you do. Like, if you're bad, you're going to get bad. If you're good, you're going to see good in life.
Yes. So karma is the Hindus' approach to explaining consequences for your actions, but the Hindu belief about those consequences and the concept behind karma is your karma sticks with you after you die. Because there ultimately is no afterlife in the Hindu faith. You're going to be ultimately absorbed into the whole of life again. And that's your goal, to earn enough good karma from one life to the next that eventually you're just absorbed back into the substance of the universe in the end. And so you have good karma, then you get reincarnated as something better. If you have bad karma, if you did bad things, you're a bad person, then you're going to be reincarnated as something maybe not as good or someone not as good. Now, the concept of reincarnation and karma produced the caste system in India. That is why the caste system, if you know anything about it, in India is so rigid and is so unfair is probably a trite way to say it, but is unfair, where you have people that are in India that are viewed as lower people that should not be interacted with, should not be helped. There is no upward mobility within a caste system, especially when that caste system is based on a spiritual belief that you are in a lower caste in this life that you currently have because in past lives you have made decisions that have put you there. And so where would be the motivation to elevate people from one caste of the poor people or the servants or somebody that's a ruler? And that's why you could see in a system like that why the people that are wealthy, that are the elites of a society, well, people would look at them and be like, well, they must be a great person because they're wealthy. They have everything this life has to offer. So they must have, yeah.
But isn't the goal, like you just said, to not be rebirthed?
Yes, it is. And that is one of the unique things about I think one of the unique contradictions.
Right. I heard someone say, I love my life so much, when I die, I want to come back as myself. But based on this, like that's not the ultimate goal. So it doesn't even make any sense.
It doesn't. And I'd say that that's one of the things that a Hindu teacher would look at that person that said that and say, well, that's not the goal. I think the avid believers and supporters of it would say, well, that's not really what you're trying to do. You're not trying to. They might say, well, you do things like that, you're going to make decisions, you're going to be bad karma, and you're not going to come back like that. And so it is a contradictory system. And then within that system, there are more gods in Hinduism than there probably has ever been in any polytheistic faith ever. There's a God for everything. And that's why it's really a little bit of a combination of spiritism, where there was a worship of the spirit of the water, the spirit of the trees, the spirit of this and that, whatever you might look at, there's a God for that. And that's really a little bit of what Hinduism is. And so they not only do they teach that you should be good to people, because that would produce good karma, but you have to worship. They have obviously some of the most elaborate temples in the world are Hindu temples. And you can just look at some of their buildings that they've built, and they believe that those are significant things that they have built for their gods. And so there's more things on the concept of Hinduism that you can delve into to understand it better than that. But I want to give you a little bit of a summary concept so you can see, okay, Hindus believe. Okay, you've got, I gave you their scriptures, the Vedas, the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita. I messed that one up. I can't pronounce it right when I'm not trying to do it quick. But those are the things that they would look back at and say, this is where our faith comes from. This is what tells us what to believe. And so it is more complex than a simple summary makes it sound. But those are some things to understand about what Hinduism believes. But ultimately, what Hinduism is a works-based faith system, right? Because you have to do good to get better. You have to worship right. You have to do all these things. It is a works-based faith system. Buddhism. Were you going to say something a minute ago, Katie?
I was just wondering if they think anyone has achieved that liberation from rebirth.
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably. They just never come back.
Yeah, because you wouldn't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they just cease to be at all?
That is their and it's partially connected with their view of just the energy of the universe itself, and you just ultimately just get reabsorbed into that, and that's.
So you were saying there's no heaven.
Correct.
Very confusing.
It is. Yeah.
It sounds like Hinduism's also got a little pantheism in it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It is a conglomeration of a lot of things because it's been around for a long time, and it took some of those earliest sentiments of. And I mentioned about a month ago a book. I couldn't think of the name of it then, but the book is called The Everlasting Man by G.K. Chesterton. If you've never read it, if you've never listened to it, it is definitely worth it because it breaks down the concept of where, how the imprint of God on the heart of man would produce thoughts like pantheism, polytheism, because their goal was to try to explain what was in there and what is out there without all of the information that you and I have to go off of, and it is a very, very good book on that concept. So The Everlasting Man, if you ever want to read it, I'd encourage you to do so. Hinduism, yes.
I was just gonna add one more thing about Hinduism, just from my little experience, understanding like when you're witnessing to someone who has Hinduistic beliefs, if you don't know at first, if they're Indian or whatnot, a lot of times they can almost sound like they believe what you believe because they accept other gods.
Yeah.
And they'll say, I have faith in God, and things like that. So what's really important is helping them understand that there is only one true God, and having faith in him and him alone, and turning away from those other gods is kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll just accept God as part of their other gods.
Yeah.
beliefs.
Yes, very good point, and that's exactly right. So,
Do they-
say
Do they accept?
they would accept Jesus as another God. That would be how because they accept just about every God they ever hear of, ultimately. And so, but the problem with that is when you accept Jesus, you have to believe he's the only way of salvation. You have to believe his sin alone could atone. And so, and that's what I've known of people who've preached over in India, and that's the point that they have to emphasize is that you can't just add Jesus to your other gods. You have to believe that he's the only God. You have to reject. And now, when you're sharing the gospel with a kid or something, you don't have to get into all of that as deeply. But when you're talking with a religious Hindu person who has tried to be a devout worshiper of their numerous gods, then you're going to have to break that concept down. And like Rebecca was talking about, we spent a lot of time talking with a lady that she sounded like she'd accept Jesus the first time you ever tell her, but the more and more she talks, Jesus becomes just another part of the very confused mosaic of faith that she has put together from all of the different spiritual encounters that she's ever had. And so Hindus can get very, very, very confused because it's very easy faith to be a pluralistic faith. I mean, the concept of coexisting already kind of exists within Hinduism itself because it is a little bit of it does have some contradictions even built in, but, well, what does that matter? Because that's just, we just accept just about everything that comes down the pike on that front, as long as it doesn't tell us to forsake what we already believe about the things that we already believe. So
So do people just make up their own gods? Like, if there's no single founder, like is the God of the Bible not part of mainstream Hinduism?
no,
And
he's
they
not.
just- anyone you talk to might have different gods.
Yes, they would. Now there are some predominant ones, and that's where their scriptures do break down.
Oh, right, you said that.
Yeah, so they have scriptures. The prominent deities, I don't know if I've listed them out here.
Oh, sorry.
Somebody tell me if they're there, but I don't think I have them on there. But there's about three, and I can't think of their names right now, but three main gods in Hinduism, and then they just kind of go on from there. So they do have adherence to a primary.
Was it that first word? Brahman or something?
Brahman is the concept, the ultimate reality concept, like that. To be reabsorbed into Brahman is the yeah. So great questions. That's what we want for this, and hopefully it helps everybody that's sitting there listening to us with questions too. So, all right, Buddhism. What is Buddhism? Well, who is the founder? Buddha. Very good. Right? And yes, Siddhartha Gautama. So, or Buddha. It's kind of like, yeah. So Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. Buddhism is an offshoot from Hinduism. Buddha was raised in a Hindu family. His father was a leader of sorts, and he's a wealthy family, so obviously you could see where that would put him in the caste system. He was alive in around 560 BC. And his dad wanted him, and Buddha was set to be a monarch of sorts, so a leader of sorts. And so what his dad did was he sheltered Buddha from all sickness, pain, and death. When Buddha would go out into the community around him, servants would go before him, and they would clean the streets before him. They would remove all sick people. So Buddha never saw anybody that was sick, ever, to protect the worldview that they were trying to create in this son of theirs was the goal. Until one day an old man walked by Buddha because he slipped by the servants. And when Buddha saw him, he asked the question, well, what's wrong with that guy? He was the first old person he'd ever seen in his life. And that led him to understand, okay, he's old because that's what happens to people. They get old and they die. It totally shattered, as you can imagine. It's like somebody telling you Santa's real, and he's not, right?
What?
By the way. So, and you lie to your kids their whole life, and then finally they find out you're a liar, and they don't know what to trust about you ever again, right? And so, well, this was a little worse than finding out Santa Claus is not real, right? And so he found out that the concepts that were being put forth to him were being put forth in a way that were not accurate to the world around him. And it just totally shattered his way of thinking. And so he pretty well renounced the Hindu faith, and he went seeking to find peace in this world without the concepts of Hinduism as the foundation. And so he started by disciplining his body as a monk for 6 years. He gave up pretty much eating and doing, and we just did the bare bones of things you had to do to survive. And after 6 years, he was malnourished. He was unable to find peace in that way. And it was at that point that he came across what he believed was the answer to enlightenment. And Buddha founded the entire concept of Buddhism on this one concept, that desire is the thing that causes all pain and suffering. And so if you can rid the world of desire, then all of life and suffering will go away, or all of suffering will go away, and you will be at peace. Buddhism is more of a way of life, truthfully, than it is a religion. They do not have a God that they worship. There certainly is no creator then. So the world, there really is not a lot of answers about why the world is in Buddhism at all. It just is accepted as it is. And so the concept of Buddhism is one, it's like, okay, life stinks. This is how we can help you deal with it. Really. And now, that might not be as flowery as a Buddhist would necessarily want to think, but a lot of times people do turn to Buddhism because it's rhetoric of, oh, you want to be at peace, and everybody at peace with the universe, and at peace with everything around you, and all the people around you, and it sounds nice, and if they're not in some of the ways that they'll say, it's just, well, yeah, why wouldn't you want that? But it can get very mystical very quickly. The concept of meditation with yoga, and I'm not here to attack yoga, but the concept,
Attack it.
the concept of yoga was one that was started by the Buddhist faith system to get yourself in line with the energy of the universe so that you would be more at peace. And so yoga is used by some as a door to get people closer to accepting the tenets of Buddhism. And so on that front, I think yoga is a bad thing. If you just use their stretches because you need to stretch, I guess you'd probably be fine, because you don't know if they're yoga. Probably if you just find a stretch that works, right? So, but on the spiritual or the philosophical point, the faith system of Buddhism is really broken into two different things. So there are the Four Noble Truths, and then there is the Eightfold Path. Yeah, the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. So let me give them to you real quick. Life is suffering. Desire produces suffering. End desire, end suffering. And truth number 4 is end suffering on the Eightfold Path. So that's the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, right? Now, the Eightfold Path. What is the Eightfold Path? Ultimately, like I said, it's just a way of life. When you hear this, you'll say, okay, well, that didn't sound too bad, right? And I'm not going to break down every one of these. But the first thing is to have a right view of life. So see reality as it actually is. Have right intention in your life. To have right speech, right action, a right livelihood, or a career that is aligned with what actually is true and right. To have right effort and mental discipline, right mindfulness, to think properly, and to have a right concentration in life. You say, well, that seems really, really general. It really, really is. That's why it can become very easy for someone to get sucked into these ways of thinking and not really be aware of it. But what Buddha was trying to do was create a philosophy to live life in a moral, atheistic way. You don't need God. You just need to be a good person. You need to be at peace with everybody around you. You need to be at peace with the world around you. Never kill anything. Never. There's a lot of emphasis in some aspects of Buddhism, even on you don't want to kill a bug on accident. I mean, there's because you want to be at peace with the universe around you, and ultimately, Buddhism has a little bit of a similar concept, a little different, but to ultimately just be to reach this point of nirvana where you also just kind of cease to exist. There's no afterlife. It's not just a wow, the words just escaped me, but a cessation of being. You're just once again absorbed into the concept of the universe, and then you're done. And that's your goal as a Buddhist person.
So are they vegan?
Many of them are, but not all of them. It's just there's branches within Buddhism, just like there is within everything else. And so there would be some that would say, well, you're at peace with the world around you because those things are there for you to eat, and so that would be some of it. But it's just, but then some would be very, very that way. So, yeah, yep. So that's Buddhism.
I'm sorry if you just explained this while I was looking something up, but it says rebirth until nirvana?
Yes. So there's reincarnation again. Yeah. In Buddhism, like there is in Hinduism. So there's a.
Okay.
Yes, because it came out of Hinduism. So it does keep some of those concepts. They just tried to perfect them and remove the divine aspect of it. You get rid of the gods.
So then I wonder if that person had said, I want to come back to myself, they were a Buddhist.
It could have been.
That would make more sense.
Probably. Very good. Any questions on that? More? We made it through 2 of the 5.
Is that Nirvana the band or Nirvana the
I know, right?
So they can all join Nirvana. Man, they missed their chance then, didn't they? We missed it. I know it was there, but not in Nirvana. But very good. All right. Well, it's 8 o'clock, so I'm not going to keep on going, but we'll dive back in to Islam next week, and so you can do your studies on Islam this week and come prepared with the questions that you have about it. Certainly would be an appropriate way to approach the next week, and then we'll just keep going forward as we try to answer the questions that are prevalent in the day. We live certainly in a world that is pushing all kinds of different thoughts on you, and you want to be able to answer each one of them. And I know some of these questions might be more pertinent to you, and some of them might not be. But my guess is that one day we'll get to the one that's on your mind, and it's not on somebody else's mind. And so that's what Bible study is for, and it certainly is a joy. I was working today on a project that I'm looking forward probably in the next couple of weeks to having sewn up, and that way it'll be beneficial to you. I do record all of the Bible studies unless my phone's on the fritz or I just totally forget. And also the class that I teach on Sundays. And so not too long in the future, we'll have that you'll be able to access it through Spotify or Apple's podcasts or or anything else. And so you'll be able to, if you're not here or something, then you'll be able to catch up in different things as to what we talked about as well. So I thought I'd let you know that that is coming down the pike, and we'll be able to get that information in your hands, whether you're able to be here or not. And that hopefully will be a blessing to you all. So, all right, any other questions on the topics of tonight or anything else that's,
I did have a quick question,
Yeah.
but y'all can leave.
you're dismissed. James says, to get out of here, guys.
James doesn't want us to do
Yeah.
that.
Not-
Yeah. You
You
can wait
said
for his question or you can go.
Rebirth until nirvana, so like once they reach nirvana is the thought that then once I die, it's
Yes, yeah,
Or you
yeah.
live
So,
forever.
no, it's a kind of an
That seems like you wouldn't want to
absolution.
reach that.
Well,
Another contradiction.
well, it's because you're at peace with, you're at total peace with the universe. You're right where you're supposed to be. It's the rhetoric that they give out. Obviously, it's a,
So there's no heaven here either?
correct.
Question,
Yes,
your question, can I get more cheese?
With Hinduism,
yeah,
radical Hindus are very violent towards Christians and even not as radical Hindus. Do you know if that's something like in their religion I mean, it seems like they're trying to be like a peace and love, coexistent, just the general one you mean. But
Yeah.
for the radicals, is that something in their religion that they get that from? Or is it more like radical Christians, who just abuse Christianity and aren't necessarily truly Christian?
I need to look into it again. It's inherent in, it's always been that way from what I gather. It's one of those faiths that, like you said, on its surface, it's very welcoming. But so was Rome. Rome in the first century accepted everybody's gods. Unless you said you have to accept mine and only mine. And Hinduism is kind of that way. It's kind of, you have to, you certainly can't tell me that you're exclusively right, but it tends to be pretty, even like you said, the radical Hindus, even just to the mainstream Hindu, can be a little bit antagonistic.
And I guess I'm kind of wondering too, like with Islam, people will call them radical Islamists, but they're actually just following scripture.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wondering that with like radical Hindus,
Yeah.
are they actually not really following the scripture and whatever they believe, or is that actual like the
Good question.
full,
Yeah.
the
You'll have to read it
demonstration
and
of
find
their
out.
Yes.
You'll have to read it.
Yeah. So
I'm sure it's a good read.
I've had a better grasp on it in the past, but it's escaped